Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakarishu Sarvada. Om Ganganapate Namaha. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha. Guru Deva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sarva Mangala Mangalle Shive Sarvartha Sadhike Sharanyatrambake Devi Narayani Namostute. Shri Lakshmi Narayana Namo Namaha. Shri Nar Narayana Namo Namaha. Shri Parabrahmane Namaha. Shri Sadgurubhyo Namaha. Om Namo Hanumate Bhayavanjanaya Sukham Kuru Phat Swaha. Welcome to Nitya Satsang. Today is the 1st of July 2025. I want to offer my prostrations, Anantakoti Namaskaram, Dandat Pranam to all the great sages and to Bhagavan residing in the Hriday Akash of every single being. With that bhavana, we are continuing to examine Bhakti, and now, as promised, starting this month, today is the 1st of July, we will be discussing and exploring by the grace of Bhagavan Krishna and Sri Radharani and all the great sages and all the great gurus, the concept of Prem-Lakshana Bhakti. Now, this is quite interesting. I will try to do a screen share here with you, so give me just a moment here. Okay. Now, if you remember, we have been discussing in the last 2 months the 9 forms of devotion. The 9 forms of devotion are Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. So we looked at Atma Nivedanam for at least 2 or 3 weeks last month. Now, what is Prem-Lakshana Bhakti? What exactly is that? So this expression, Prem-Lakshana Bhakti, which you can see on the screen here, it is actually from a Swaminarayan scripture called the Satsangi Jivan, written by Shatananda Swami. And this particular type of bhakti is described, it's not a type of bhakti, it is the culmination of bhakti itself. So in the Satsangi Jivan, it is explained that while the 9 forms of bhakti are practices, the 10th Prem Lakshana is the acquired state of perfection. It is the very nature of the soul in its purest, most love-filled connection with God, with the Supreme. I hope this sentence makes sense. Let's look at this sentence carefully and slowly. Okay, so this is the culmination. This is our target. Those who are devotees of God, in any religion, in any tradition, in any path, this is the actual goal. It is beautifully described, and it is clearly stated in Satsangi Jivan that this is called Prem-Lakshana Bhakti. So while other Bhakti scriptures like Narad Bhakti Sutra and Shandilya Bhakti Sutra extensively describe the nature of supreme devotion, often referred to as Para Bhakti or Prema, they do not typically enumerate a specific 10th stage following the 9-fold path. Right, so yes, Narad Bhakti Sutra and Shandilya Bhakti Sutra both are tremendous scriptures. We're going to be looking at them also, some pieces of them. They do talk about Para Bhakti, yes. And I think in my interpretation, humble interpretation, I would simply say that's the same as Prem Lakshana Bhakti. I don't think there's any real difference between the two, but they do not call it a 10th Bhakti. In Satsangi Jivan, Shatanand Muni specifically has called it a 10th Bhakti. And it is good for us to use that language because that shows us, at least mentally in our mind, that there is that state of Prem, which is Purana Bhakti, which is Prema. Prema Lakshana means it is a state of perfection by the grace of Guru and Paramatma. Right? By the grace of God and Bhagwan or Bhagwan ke Sant, we can realize this Prem Lakshana Bhakti. In the case of Vaishnava Parampara, by the Krupa, the boundless Krupa and immense grace of Shri Radhika Ji. By her grace, this is possible to reach that stage of Prem Lakshana. It's very interesting and it is very, very powerful because the way Satsangi Jivan describes this, the 9 forms of bhakti are practices. Absolutely they are. And in fact, each of them is a doorway into the perfection of bhakti, where bhakti opens actually. Let's go back to those 9 forms again. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. Any one of them could be predominant. In a bhakta's life, all 9 are performed as sadhana. Right? So let's be clear. Are we listening to the glories of Bhagavan? Yes. By the Leela Charitra. For example, Ram Charitmanas is a Leela Charitra of Bhagavan Ramchandra Ji. Or Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, is a Leela Charitra of Bhagavan Krishna. Right? Or there are many charitras like this of different incarnations. In the Swaminarayan Sampradaya, this Satsangi Jivan is the charitra of and teachings also of Bhagavan Shri Swaminarayan or Sajanand Maharaj, Sajanand Swami Maharaj. Similarly, other gurus also have their charitras. People who believe in Sai Baba, for example, there is Sai Sat Charitra. And there are so many like this. People have written, the devotees have written the stories and the life of great sages. Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi is considered, anyone who has realized Atma can be called Bhagavan also. Although that's just a different use of that term. So Ramana Maharishi ka bhi charitra hai. There is also charitra of Ramakrishna Paramahansa, right? So great sages have charitra. And when we listen to the glories of the incarnations of God and the great enlightened sages and their lives and their teachings, that is called Shravan Bhakti. Okay, that is a bhakti. Like what we're doing right now is a type of Shravan Bhakti. It's kind of, I think, yes, you could consider it that way. Then again, Kirtan, singing the names again and again. This is sadhana. Please remember, these 9 forms are definitely sadhana. I think this is a tremendous, beautiful clarification made, or it's an interpretation by Shatanand Swami in Satsangi Jivan about what are the 9 forms of devotion. They are sadhanas to be practiced as often as possible with as much regularity as possible. Then that way our internal Shakti becomes harmonized and it can connect properly inside Paramatma, and it is a preparation for Prem-Lakshana Bhakti. As we progress in the 9 forms, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam. I don't want to repeat all of the details of that. We looked at it already last 2 months, and those recordings are available on YouTube. As we progress in those 9 forms of sadhana, there are glimpses of bhakti that opens. The sadhana itself is a practice. It is a mental, psychological, emotional, sense-oriented, physical practice. For example, bowing down. You have a murti of Hanumanji, like in our Mahalakshmi Mandir. I was just there yesterday, in fact. They have a beautiful Hanuman Mandir. They have separate mandir has been constructed in addition to the main mandir. And there are 4 murtis of Hanumanji there. You can do pradikshana, and so many beautiful sadhana can be done there, right? So let's use that as an example. So when we go inside, we have the darshan of the murti. There's a tall, massive Hanumanji ki murti. 2 other murtis are there on the left and the right, and one is outside. So there's 4 murtis, and then there's a Das Hanumanji inside the main temple. There's 5 murtis of Hanumanji in the Mahalakshmi temple here in Delaware. Think about that, right? Amazing. So when we go inside, I'm using this as an example, and this will help to clarify. When we go inside there, they usually have mantra playing, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. So that mantra enters into the mind. That mantra is absorbed inside, right? Then we do darshan with our eyes. You can see that all 9 forms are possible right there. In fact, they are present right there. As soon as we enter inside, we're listening to the name of Ramchandraji. We can then sing Hanuman Chalisa, or have some kirtan there also if you want. Smaran. See now, how does that work? Smaranam works by remembering the charitra of Hanumanji, the glory of Hanumanji, like that. That's an example. So that is Smaranam. And then we have the Padasevanam. We can touch the feet, or mentally touch the feet of Hanumanji, like that, So with these are all sadhana. These are physical activities. Arachan is possible. Vandan is possible. Prostrations, the dasya bhav, sakhya bhav, atmanivedanam bhav. These are all sadhanas. But now, as we do sadhana is a deliberate activity that is a doorway into prema. It is a doorway, because bhakti actually means love. Bhakti is love. So this Navdha Bhakti is a sadhana. It is activity. It is deliberate, intentional sadhana performed so that bhakti opens up from inside. Now, when bhakti opens up from inside, this is where the anubhav of love begins to show itself. Yes, initially these sadhanas are beautiful. There's no doubt about them. But as the experience of love begins to open up, that's what Shatanan Muni is talking about as the culmination point. That when love increases and increases and increases, and it reaches prema, the state of Prem-Lakshana. Lakshan means that it is the quality of prema. So the prema has reached that stage where only that remains. We can possibly interpret it that way also, right? So it is a state of perfection of bhakti. The soul in its purest nature has reached para bhakti, has reached prema bhakti, and that is specifically enumerated as the 10th stage following the ninefold path. Okay, the Bhagavad Puran, a foundation, which is basic text in Vaishnava Parampara, also vividly portrays the height of prema bhakti through the devotion of the Gopikas of Vrindavan towards Sri Krishna. Their selfless and all-consuming love is often cited as the supreme example of this highest stage of devotion, which is the essence of what the Satsangi Jivan codifies as the 10th bhakti. So Shatanan Muni did a wonderful thing here. He actually brought out and really emphasized that this is our goal. Otherwise, we're doing sadhana bhakti, the 9 forms of devotion. But what is the goal in that? What is it that what is to be reached? That is the love between the Gopikas and Krishna. That is the Prem-Lakshana Bhakti. It is a tremendous level of bhakti. Again, it's a direct reference. Now, it's a beautiful way to put this. All right, now let's go a little bit further in here. The shift from practice to a state of being, meaning from sadhana to siddha. The most crucial concept to grasp is that the 9 forms of devotion are sadhana, or disciplined practice a devotee undertakes to purify the heart and develop a connection with God. 2 points here. Antakarana Shuddhi. Shankaracharya ji talks about this also. Antakarana Shuddhi. That the Antakarana gets purified. Now this is a key point. As, for example, if I'm Sachin, this Bhakta is trying to move into Prem-Lakshana Bhakti, if we want that destination, we want to reach that stage, the 9 forms, by going through them again and again and again, they purify. It's like, it's like muddy water that you put it through a filter and you put it through another filter, 9 filters, let's say. You put it through one filter after another. Eventually, absolute pure water comes out at the end. It's something like that. Let's say there's 9 filters set up. You need 9 filters, and you put them through, and you put the water again and again and again until the water is 100% purified. Similarly, the 9 forms of bhakti are purifiers. They purify the mind, and once they purify our life, in fact. So there's a more detailed description here of that purification process. And again, this is like learning an instrument. This is another analogy. At first, you have to practice scales, learn chords, things like that. And consciously think about every note. What are you doing? How to do the practice? It is to be taught properly. It is to be practiced. There's many ways of learning this, but it's pretty straightforward. It has to do with consistency. And as we are practicing, it requires effort and discipline. Nobody can enter Prem-Lakshana Bhakti just like that, unless you're already a born enlightened being. For all of us, we have to put effort and we have to be disciplined behind that. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Our mind is already in the animal mind. It's running in 1,000 directions. So effort is purush prayatna, purusharth, and discipline that is necessary. Now, again, this analogy continues. After years of dedicated practice, a master musician doesn't just play music. They are musical. The music flows from inside. It's no longer the person is trying to practice it anymore. It's just flowing. The music flows from the master musician effortlessly, spontaneously, and with profound emotion. You see this point here. See this point very, very carefully. Okay, so the music that is flowing from inside, it is no longer needing any effort. It is just flowing. And that bhakti flows, love flows from one to another, one bhajan to another, one name to another, the connection is unbroken. We get glimpses of this in the material world, but these are only glimpses. When we are really enjoying some activity, thoroughly, material, bhautik activity, for some time, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 10 minutes, we just want to be in that. And it's effortless. We just are spontaneous. We're just in it. Maybe it's some music we're listening to. Maybe it's a dance. Maybe it's some TV show. Maybe it's a conversation with a good friend. Whatever. Or some intimate relationship. Stuff is going on. I won't describe that too much. All of that is then effortless and spontaneous. You don't need to make any effort for that because you're in it. Those are our bodily level. Within the experiences of Rajogun, Tamogun, we have some glimpses of it through the gunas of Maya. But this is a different level. This is pure devotion. Through purity, purification has reached such a stage where the possibility of effortless flow of divya emotion, profound emotion happens. Effortless flow of divine emotion, spontaneous flow of divine emotion, it begins to open up like the music of a music that flows of a masterful musician. So similarly, this is the analogy, right? Similarly, a devotee in the state of Prem-Lakshana Bhakti, again it's a state, very important point here, it is called sthiti. Sthiti means it is a state of realization. It is a stage where the state is realized. This is called the state of Prem-Lakshana Bhakti, where there is no need for effort anymore. Right? So the devotee does not try to remember God. God is a constant, inseparable part of the devotee's consciousness, meaning psychological consciousness. How tremendous is this? Devotion has been linked inside. So the influence of those actions that are binding in the sansar vanishes in this state. Is sthiti mein, Hindi mein कहना, in Hindi we can say, is sthiti mein Maya ka koi prabhav rehta nahi. Maya completely dissipates in its usual sense. And why is that? Meaning it dissolves in Paramatma. Daivi yesha gunamayi mama maya duratya mam eva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. Bhagavan Krishna Swayam kehte, he says, you come to me, I will remove the cover of Maya. You don't have to worry about that. You cannot remove it yourself. All we can do is to practice 9 forms of devotion, and by the grace of the ideal Bhakta, Shri Radhika ji, in the case of Sri Krishna Upasana, by her Krupa, this is possible. Now there's actually quite a bit of interesting Tattvagnan that goes along with this. Okay, now I'm going to go into this. I just want to mention it here. Let me just do a screen share. And this is quite tremendous. So, this is called the Swarupa Shakti, the intrinsic potency. Shri Radha as the pulse of Krishna's inner life force. So, there are infinite energies. God has infinite energies. So Swarupa Shakti is what? Radha as living essence of Krishna's internal energy. So the Vaishnava Acharyas identified three broad Shakti bands that emanate from Bhagavan. They emanate from Bhagavan. That is Antah Shakti, Bahir Shakti, and Tatastha Shakti. So that is internal spiritual Shakti, Bahir Shakti, and Tatastha Shakti. So this Antar Shakti, which is God's own inner spiritual energy, that is called Anta Shakti. Bahir Shakti is the material world, the material Bhautik Shakti. That is all the Brahmand, all the universes. And the Tatastha Shakti, marginal dwelling energy, that is the Jivatma, is considered this way. So these are very profound ideas. Let's take a look at this diagram here for a moment to better understand this point. So these three are not inert categories, but dynamically inter-reflexive modalities of a single conscious source. You see the sentence here, this uploaded sentence. Let's please try to understand this carefully. That these are not inert categories. They're not like, okay, there's just like you categorize in the material world. You know, a stone is different from a tree, and a tree is different from a chicken, or a tiger or something. How we categorize, like, it's not like that. It's not that kind of categorization that we do, right? So it is not a type of inert category. It is dynamically inter-reflexive modality of the single conscious source. That single conscious source is Shri Purushottama Bhagavan, chapter 15 of the Gita, right? That there's only one source of everything, and that is Bhagavan Paramatma Purushottama. Tasmat Sharamatitoham Akshara Dapijottamaha Atosmi Loke Vedecha Pratitaha Purushottamaha. There are multiple verses are there in the chapter 15 of the Gita, but the source is only one. You know, Ekam Sat, that Param Satyam is one, God is one, Paramatma is one. It's not two. It's only one. For those who are devotees of Krishna, that is Krishna. For those who are devotees of Shiva, that is Shiva. Those who are devotees of certain Guru Parampara, it could be through Guru Parampara. Those who are devotees of Bhagwan Ram, it is Bhagwan Ram. Whatever it is. Jesus, it is Jesus. This is just Sachin's interpretation. I would say that this is a more Advaitic interpretation on that point. So it's a single conscious source, but I want to explain this in terms of the Bhakti Sampradayas, particularly the Vaishnava Sampradayas, connect that also with Satsangi Jivan and see how these beautiful interlinkages can help us quite a bit. So Srimati Radharani, the personified summit of divine love, fully embodies the first category, Antaha Shakti, Antar Shakti, Antaha Shakti, and is therefore identified as Swarupa Shakti, the essential self-constituting power that makes the Godhead experientially complete. I'll explain this. These sentences are really loaded sentences, all right? We have to go very, very carefully to understand them. And then there's a lot of commentaries in the Vaishnava Acharyas. It's quite tremendous. So Radhika Ji, when we have Murti of Radha Ji and Krishna, when we are doing darshan of Shri Radhika Ji in any temple or in our home temple, keep these points in mind. That Radhika Ji is who? She is the embodiment. It is when we see the form of the Antaha Shakti, which is the inner spiritual energy of that source, that is Paramatma, in this case Sri Krishna, and is therefore identified as Swarupa Shakti, which is the essential self-constituting power that makes the Godhead experientially complete. Now, what is that? You could do a PhD thesis on that one sentence easily. Tremendous. Bhagavan is one. But to experience Bhagavan, the anubhav of Bhagavan, God meaning Bhagavan meaning Parabrahma with form in the abode, let's say in terms of Golok. In Goloka, there at the center of Goloka is Bhagavan Sri Krishna Paramatma. And his energy, one of his energies is this Antaranga Shakti, Antara Shakti, Antaha Shakti. So it is a self-constituting power that makes Godhead experientially complete, meaning that Paramatma Sri Krishna is able to enjoy his own Swarupa as Radharani. That's amazing. That is absolutely tremendous. And that extraordinary internal absorption of where Krishna is absorbing his own Antara Shakti inside, and then is personified, or is personified as a personified summit of divine love. The summit of divine love is where the prema is at such an intense level that Bhagavan, that prema is part of the tattva of Paramatma. This is called Antah Shakti. बहुत tremendous बात है ये सब. Where to begin and where to stop with this? Just a couple more points. I know I've gone over time. Sorry about that. But I just want to mention some of this and get this recorded. Now there's a metaphysics here, metaphysical architecture of the three rays. Shri Jiva Goswami, he's a tremendous Vaishnava Acharya, parses Antah Shakti into three seamless intercausal vectors, each of which answers to one of the classical Satchidananda ontic predicates, meaning Sat, Chit, Ananda. We say Bhagwan is Satchidananda, yes, but now Jiva Goswami has broken that down further, that this Antah Shakti has intercausal vectors, meaning that the intercausal vector is this way. Existence is Sat. You can see it. The ray of existence. It's a tremendous, right? It's a vector. So the Sanskrit name is Sandhini. It's this eternal substratum of consciousness is called Sandhini. The ontological correlate is Sat. You know? So meaning what? The sustenance, the configuration and sustenance of the spiritual world, its abode, paraphernalia and perfected bodies. Bhagwan ka dham, the way that the abode of God is constructed, it is constructed through this ray of Sat, which is a power of Paramatma, which is Sandhini, meaning eternal substratum, and that substratum is then configuring and sustaining the spiritual world. Its abodes, meaning the dham, the different Vaikuntha dham, Shveta, those are spiritual worlds that are constructed, and the paraphernalia, the objects within those spiritual worlds, and these bodies of the liberated beings are constructed by Paramatma through the Antah Shakti, and at that Antah Shakti, one of its intercausal vectors is Sandhini, and that is called Sat. And that is what it creates a spiritual world, the abodes, paraphernalia, and perfected bodies. All right, let's stop here for now. It is very, very profound, and it is extraordinary. But to these ideas, these states, this is a highest state of Prem-Lakshana. When we reach Prem-Lakshana Bhakti, this reality opens up. That's why now we've gone into the more advanced subject of Bhakti this month. We might spend the rest of this year on this, because it's fantastic to understand these things. Tremendous ideas are there, but there's little bit at a time. We cannot put the whole $1 billion laddu on the head of an ant. We are all like the ant. And these are massive realized souls who have taught the whole world what are the abodes of God, how to understand them. But practically, to reach Prem-Lakshana Bhakti is our only goal. An illiterate person can reach Prem-Lakshana Bhakti, or a great scholar, great Pandit can also, and everybody in between. It's not a question of how much material knowledge we have. It is a matter of Divya Bhavana, Shuddha Bhavana, saintliness, and particularly purification. Without the 9 forms of bhakti as being purifiers, filters that are going to obliterate the disturbances of the Sukshma Sharira and obliterate by the grace of God, the Karana Sharira, this realization of Prem-Lakshana Bhakti that Shatanand Muni has talked about in Satsangi Jivan would not be possible. What a fantastic interlink. कितनी अद्भुत बातें भगवान की दया से इस मनन चिंतन हम कर सकते हैं ऐसी. So we pray to all the great sages for their blessings so that our buddhi can keep evolving and increasing in this direction and we can keep growing. So with that, let's do the closing mantra and then we'll stop here for now. Om Ganganapate Namaha Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakarisha Sarvadam Ganganapate Namaha Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Deva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sarva Mangala Mangalle Shive Sarvartha Sadhike Sharane Trambake Devi Narayani Namostate Om Radha Krishnaya Namo Namaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Narayanaya Om Namah Shivaya Shri Sadgurubhyo Namaha Shri Hanumate Namaha Om Aim Rim Klim Chamundaye Viche Swaha Durge Durge Rakshini Tata Swaha Shri Durga Arpanamastu Shri Radha Krishna Arpanamastu Rim